Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I guess I have to give the disclaimer too. Yeah, forget about that one. Here we go.
Save the Second is a pro-Second Amendment organization. Through good or bad, we're here to help drive and save the NRA from itself and the Second from the infighting that happens among the Second Amendment supporters. Because without the Second, the rest will fall. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Save the Second or their employers. This show offers commentary on the latest news associated with the NRA and Save the Second's endeavor to promote a strong, relevant, effective, and accountable NRA.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Thursday evening. Today is May 13th, 2021. Save the Second podcast. We haven't had as many guests on in the past as we do today. Today, we're joined by a lot of folks. Obviously, my name is Ron Carter. You can see that on the bottom. I'll have this on your favorite podcast streaming tomorrow. And, of course, I'm Ron Carter and one of the founders of Save the Second, trying to reform and correct, resuscitate, or salvage the National Rifle Association of America. I'm joined by some really, really fantastic folks. Mr. Tate, Frank Tate, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Frank Tate, NRA benefactor, life member, training counselor, CRSO, failed candidate for the board in the 2020 election, failed candidate to get on the ballot for 2021. And still running as a write-in candidate for 2021.
And there's never been a successful write-in candidate for the board of directors, so I hope you are the first, Mr. Tate. Man, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mr. Richardson, would you please introduce everyone or yourself to everyone?
Yeah, I'm John Richardson. I'm an endowment life member of the NRA. I blog at No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money, and I'm a co-host of the Polite Society podcast. And I think I do have one correction. I think Charlton Heston was a write-in candidate. So the one successful write-in candidate.
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that.
So we'll put Frank hopefully Frank will be in that same category.
Well, he's already more important to me than Charlton Heston ever was. Planet of the Apes was cool, but not as cool as Frank Tate. and we also have Mr. Ned Scott. Mr. Ned, you are something of an author and a very intriguing character. Would you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, my name is Ned Scott. I do freelance work for the Firearms News publication, Outdoor Sportsman's Group, pretty much the only official internal media source that is actually covering what's going on in the NRA and actually looking at it from a critical viewpoint. I've been blessed to have my editors let me go and do my own research and see where it takes me. And I'm a second generation life member and just simply an all around disgruntled member of the NRA, what's going on. So I'm here to help provide a different viewpoint and add my 2 cents. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you so much. Well, gents, obviously the news came out this week that the federal judge in Texas hearing the Chapter 11 bankruptcy case that the NRA had put out, dismissed it, right? Threw it out. It's gone. So there was several folks earlier on this week, apparently, that didn't realize that the NRA was even in bankruptcy. Did you guys see any of that in the comments sections of threads and whatnot? I saw a little bit of it. I was kind of surprised.
Well, I guess I'm not surprised, given that there's over 2.2 million life members and only 110,000 of them vote in the election. So to me, the degree of I don't know if I'd call it apathy, but just blissful ignorance is, I think, the best way to describe it.
Yeah, blissful ignorance, probably truly the nicest way to describe it. And for those of you that perhaps aren't aware, if you are ignorant, that's okay. Hey, get caught up to speed, right? On January 15th, the NRA filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy in Texas. Now, they're chartered in New York, and in order to file in Texas, they had to do some kind of crazy things. Like, for example, they had to file a shell company that they called it Seagirt LLC, and they really didn't do their homework because they made Seagirt a for-profit instead of a non-profit, and that was just so strange. And beyond that, and I've got to be a bit humorous, guys. Please just allow me this. I've got footage of Wayne LaPierre declaring bankruptcy.
I declare bankruptcy! I
had to do it because it's almost like The Office in real life. Like, did the NRA have really an idea outside of trying to escape Letitia James and the New York Attorney General? I mean, that was it, but that's not what they argued. What do you think, Frank? Frank, you've dealt with more bankruptcy than anybody here.
Again, and for people's background, I was part of a company that went through a Chapter 11 about 20 years ago. And to me, the thing that really jumped out was that, Wayne LaPierre made this call. He worked with the Special Litigation Committee of the officers of the NRA, Carolyn Matthews, Charles Cotton, and Willis Lee. And he testified that he did not tell John Fraser, the chief counsel. He did not tell Craig Spray, the CFO, and he did not inform the board. And when I was part of the company that did it, the board, the CFO, and the chief counsel were in meetings for 16, 18 hours a day deciding what our plans were. We worked through, I put a post up last night talking about how do you do this. First thing is the lawyers work for you, not the other way around. And then you have to decide what is the risk and the reward of the strategy. And so, are you going to be able to get what you want from this strategy? And then what are the risks if it doesn't work? And I think the NRA is actually in worse position now than it was before they filed for bankruptcy.
Well, Mr. Richardson, what do you think? Was that?
I think that's pretty accurate. What Frank just said, that they're in the worst position. I mean, they made a lot of claims about when they declared bankruptcy. They say we're financially strong. Not exactly a smart thing to say if you're going into bankruptcy. But then they said stuff like, we need some breathing space. We have potential litigation that could be troublesome financially, and a number of things that if they had kept to their story and had semi-proved it, they might have escaped with maybe just an examiner. They might have gotten their chief restructuring officer. But it almost was like nobody thought to tell Wayne LaPierre to prep him for the answers he should have given. And he basically torpedoed it. What really, I guess, got me was that, we renegotiated my contract, and that gave me the authority to declare bankruptcy. But there was never such a word in there. It was just restructure and reorganize. It didn't say bankruptcy, and nobody had a clue. Well, we think we're just kind of redoing Wayne's contract, and he slipped it by, and everything that they ever did in terms of the bankruptcy was after the fact.
Well, even the restructuring plan was finally publicized during closing arguments on May 3rd. I mean, literally, like they had, and they signed it draft. So that was something silly to me.
And the New York Attorney General objected to it because said, we've closed presentation of exhibits. This is not valid.
Yeah.
But part of just the way they went about it kind of leaves you speechless. And you see the fine hand of their outside counsel, William Brewer III, whispering in Wayne's ear, hey, Wayne, this is the way we can get you out of New York. Let's just do this. This will work. It's going to be in Texas. And this, actually, somebody from Akron and McQueen said to me, if you you're in the Northern District of Texas and you have a judge named Cooter and you still lose. It says something about your case.
Yeah, and what it makes me think of like other cases. Like now, if the NRA files any case, I'm going to look at it through the lens of their previous bankruptcy case being thrown out and almost laughed at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. Mr. Ned, what do you think about all this? I know you've been covering it, but I'm curious to what extent.
Okay. Here, from the information that I have, and there's going to be a forthcoming article in Firearms News. I'll go ahead and plug that, which will explain what I think follows the only thought pattern that to me makes sense of everything that's going on. And to go back to Mr. Richardson's point of view on how, almost Keystone Cops kind of, actions taken. Remember, Brewer was removed essentially from the bankruptcy case. And you had the other two representatives, which probably weren't as well prepped, having to play catch up or knew very little to begin with. And they were just there to help represent the main client. I'm not exactly sure how out of state attorneys can do what they do, or if I don't remember where Brewer's at, excuse me. I'll apologize for that piece of ignorance. So that's where I think that line goes from is how it fell apart, because I think this whole process is simply a complete chaotic run. And I'll use since Mr. Carter's already provided a kind of media analogy. If you remember from the original Batman movie in 1989, you had Jack Palance, the great Jack Palance, playing a character, Boss Grissom, who slammed his fist on a desk at one point when he was talking about Harvey Dent. And if a connection was made, if Letitia James, aka Harvey Dent, makes a connection between Lane LaPierre or his Gang of Four and some other component of the NRA, to quote the attorney, who I'll say is William Brewer in the background, were dead and buried. And I think that's the only reasonable explanation that puts all this into a framework. Otherwise, it's like, what are they doing? I mean, is it Joe Biden essentially, our version of Joe Biden running the National Rifle Association, a completely dysfunctional, out of touch and possibly suffering from dementia human being? I mean, that's my hypothetical statement, so I don't get anyone into trouble. So, but I think that's literally the problem, is they realize, because discovery's coming, and I think that's what they were trying to beat. Discovery was coming, and there's something. I think there's three vectors that it could possibly be, but I think there's something underneath the surface beyond Wayne LaPierre's suits, his restaurants, his boats, his credit cards. There's something else that they know is a problem. They can't get rid of it. They can't hide it. So the only thing they're doing is they threw this pass out there to try and stop the train from reaching the station. Because once it does, things are going to get really bad. And I think it's unavoidable at this point. But I think that's the only thought process they had. And that's why they did what they did and provided all this treasure trove of information to all the parties concerned. I'll kick it back with that little sort of tidbit.
Ned, I have a question for you. When one of the cases is with the DC attorney, and it's about these are my words, misappropriation of funding from the NRA Foundation back into core NRA, and that's one that nobody's talking about, and that's the one that I thought really had legs, because if that separate nonprofit was basically being drained of cash for other operations, I think that's one that there's real culpability. There's legal risk there. And so I don't know if that's one of the ones you think about as one of the vectors that may have the real nasty stuff sitting there.
Yes, you have the one line of thinking, because if you look at the correlating expenses, the NRA Foundation has essentially been supplying almost an equal amount of money to supply the programs that fund Eddie Eagle, Refuse to Be a Victim, Women on Target, When you look at the expenses, if you start digging into the NRA tax returns, that wonderfully exciting, trove of information to sift through, you will, and I'm being absolutely sarcastic about that. You see some very interesting correlations, and that's one of them. That is definitely one of them. The other two, one is it involves other NRA subsidiaries and something else. But I think I'm gleaming a lot of stuff from the NRA tax returns, and I'm not a tax attorney or CPA, so I'm not sure if what I'm seeing is just not important. But to at least the layman like myself, there's something there that doesn't smell right. So,
and I'll add one in because I know in the North Carolina financial filings there were more details than in the 990. In particular, the cost of fundraising and the yield of fundraising, and if there's any sort of I would say shenanigans going on, that relationship with the marketing side and the fundraising to me seems a rich field for abuse.
Yeah, and I have to agree wholeheartedly that there's something that we're missing here. Why on earth would 72 of the 76 board of directors hold such a devotion to Wayne LaPierre? But then again, maybe if you look at the blog NRA in Danger, which has done a fantastic job, they made the observation that the vast majority of the directors on the board of directors are there as kind of their crowning achievement. There's some shooters on there. There's some folks that have done a little bit of activism, and then you have like Judy White, Barbara Rumpel. Okay, it's not. Maybe it's they wanted the ignorant persons who wouldn't ask questions and just shake their head and smile and say sure. But my gosh, it just seems like a bunch of lemmings, going off the cliff. There has to be something else that we're missing, and I think Letitia James is absolutely aware of that because, of course, she says that she's going to pick up the trial or pick up the NRA's her case against the NRA in 2022. So, several more months from now. So now that left me curious. If I'm Letitia James, if I'm a district attorney, if I'm prosecuting anybody, and I just heard them plead the fifth like 15 times in a singular deposition and give all the answers that they did, well, my God, it seems to me like an easy win, an easy, indict them, throw the book at them, it'll stick, we'll get some easy convictions. But she didn't do that. She said, no, we're going to wait. Makes me think that she's giving them just enough more rope to hang themselves with. But then again, Frank, as you were mentioning earlier, that could potentially be, more of a political-driven timeline. We were talking beforehand, of course. What do you guys think about that?
My comment to Ron was 2022 is an election year.
Yeah.
And so dragging things out just is going to distract the NRA and keep them off the playing field in 2022, the same way this nonsense kept them off the playing field or substantially reduced their ability to impact the election of 2020.
I don't disagree at all with Frank. And if I remember correctly, Letitia James was elected in 2018, so it's another thing that she can use for re-election. As I understand it, she already has 100,000 pages or more of depositions. Whether or not she can succeed in dissolving the organization, it's probably 50-50. Can she oust Wayne and John Fraser? Probably. Or even a criminal referral. Maybe not so much on John Fraser, but definitely on Wayne.
Yeah.
I think
My gut
Fraser is into it up to his neck.
Yeah.
As the secretary, he's got to have some information.
Well, he's the one that signed the documents for New York. He's the one that's legally on the hook.
Yeah.
Well, and he's also the one that when asked about Millie Hallow still working for the NRA and giving any disciplinary action, he's like, nope, haven't given her any discipline. Yeah. I guess we might be going a little bit deeper into the weeds than what most people would understand. So here, let's take a question. Gun websites. You got here late, right? So if you were to summarize where the NRA is today, yeah, I guess I'll take it first. I think the NRA is in its death struggles or death throes, convulsions, whatever you want to call it. It's still alive, but it's not quite dead, but it's about to be. And the chances of a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing ever going through is slim to none now. Chapter 7 liquidation is far more likely. But even then, the assets of the NRA, which there's a lot of assets, who knows what happens to them? And that's kind of scary to me. But even more scary is the fact that the NRA still has a lot of funds. And if I've been given a death sentence, right? If I'm about to die, I'm going skydiving, Rocky Mountain climbing, like the song, right? I'm not going to save money. And so I think that's where I'm most concerned right now is that the bank accounts are going to be emptied. Brewer is going to be, a billionaire before this is over with. And the NRA member is going to be the one harmed, but more so the citizens of the United States. That's it's really cheery, guys. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Let's go around and what do you fellas think? I'll start with you, Mr. Richardson. What do you think?
Well, the NRA is where they were on January 14th, back at square one, except they're down at least $10 million in fees to Brewer and to Nelligan and to the Garmin firm, or more. More dirt has come out. Wayne has been totally exposed as either naive, ignorant of what's going on, or just out of his league. And the Attorney General of New York has got tons more dirt to make her case. And, it goes back to Brewer's going to be fighting the New York Attorney General for another 30 to 40 or $50 million. And if she does succeed in dissolving the NRA, the assets have to be transferred to a like organization. But who is to say that a like organization couldn't be some group that says, our mission is gun safety? And where have you heard those words before?
Oh, those mothers demanding action are certainly all for the safeties.
Yeah. And really what's hurt is some of the core mission. Politically, of course, they've been hurting. But what about training? That is a key mission. And in a lot of states, to qualify to be a concealed carry instructor, you have to have an NRA certification or be a law enforcement officer.
Yeah.
That's what we have in North Carolina.
Yeah, same in Colorado. Absolutely. And now I'm sure that void would absolutely be filled later on, but that void is going to exist. And that's the thing that really frustrates me. Yeah. And if you are an NRA certified firearms instructor, and you have to have some sort of firearms instructor credentials, I would honestly just recommend to you right now, go to Rangemaster. They're up and coming. Of course, everybody knows USCCA. Hey, they're probably going to be the largest for-profit entity doing firearms training. Yeah, definitely look into those because it's better to be prepared than unprepared. Mr. Tate, is that an accurate assessment? What do you think?
I think it's accurate. To me, it's, again, how many tens of millions more is Brewer going to vampire away from NRA members? To me, one of the things that's disturbing is what's also happening with the other parts of the NRA. So I was in a chat this afternoon with a member who is part of the national pistol competitions. And the national matches are supposed to be coming up in July. Well, the turning targets have yet to be installed. They have not even ordered any targets. They have not built any benches. This match would normally have 600 competitors. Only 60 have registered. And so to me, that's appalling because, the NRA national matches are one of the crown jewels. It's international competition. It's great for the sport. And then here you have to me, what seems like there's no resources being made available to the competition side. Education and training, we're slowly updating the materials. What they're doing is great with the limited staff that they have. But again, things are slowly coming out. I mean, we got a new RSO book a couple of weeks ago. But the last update was 2016. Even just something as simple as, getting better graphics and better pictures. These things are just, they're doing great work, but it's just coming out so slowly because there's no resources, because all that money is going to pay Brewer.
I think you're absolutely right there. Brewer is definitely going to be swimming in cash. Mr. Ned, what do you think, buddy? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, as I have reported in my series about the NRA has just basically been a noisemaker for the last 15 years. And I think as far as the political activism, the only people that are going to be hurting in that area is the Republicans, because they're not going to have their ATM anymore of getting their check from the NRA. I do believe, along with Mr. Richardson and Mr. Tate, that the training world is definitely going to be the most hard hit. I mean, my state is also requires NRA certification. Multiple ranges that I'm affiliated with require NRA certification for safety officers. So should all this come to a head quickly, there's definitely going to be a problem. And of course, obviously, any competition matches that the NRA, was involved in. Although I think a lot of the international ones have the issue of restricted travel and other COVID-related problems. Ammunition shortage be another issue. So that's a multivariable problem. I completely say the only winner in this is the attorneys that are going to get paid. My feeling is that it wouldn't be surprising to see some people flee south to places without extradition, down the road, because I think that they're afraid of because any jail time, should there be criminal referrals for a lot of these players involved, is going to be very serious considering their age. So I have completely mixed feelings. I think a lot of areas will be fine. I think a lot of areas will not be. So we'll wait and see. I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing how this roller coaster ends.
And it's going to continue to be a roller coaster, especially if you're working with ILA, which, by the way, Institute for Legislative Action is not general NRA, and so Jason Wime has been, still working hard at ILA. What do you guys foresee there? Do you think that they'll be able to survive? What do you think, Mr. Frank?
I'm not. Again, it gets back to everything that's happening with with core NRA. You've got other places like Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, GOA. I mean, there are other people that have been picking up the slack, and that people have been financially supporting them. I know I'm a life member of all of them because you need to. At this point, you need to cover your bases and make sure that we have the protection that we need. But I think the biggest challenge where the NRA could make a difference where others didn't is stopping bad laws before they get started. The Firearms Policy Coalition is great about fighting it, but fighting it through the courts once they're there. And to me, that's the big difference. And to me, that's what these problems at the NRA have done, is they've taken the offense out of the NRA in terms of stopping the bad stuff from happening, and are forcing everything through defense. And to me, it's lawyers first, because defense, that's all about lawyers. And it's really about, holding votes where they're scored and holding legislators accountable. When's the last time you heard the NRA scoring a vote and holding people accountable and NRA supporting? I haven't heard any in years.
None. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Richardson, here's a question for you. I think that Frank really touched on, but I think you may be able to provide a little bit more on. Well, I mean, several guys in the comments now are wanting to know, hey, where do you put your money? Where do you put your dollars? What organization? I mean, obviously, so many people have been donating to the NRA, but what would you recommend? I personally, like Tate, like I, Gun Owners America, Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, I like them all. In fact, I've bought a lot of shirts recently from Firearms Policy Coalition because they are amazing shirts. But what do you think? I haven't dealt so much with the amicus briefs, and I know you are really up to speed on that.
Well, certainly, I'm good friends with Brandon Combs of Firearms Policy Coalition since the very beginning, along with Second Amendment Foundation. Both of those deserve your support. But I will say, at least here in North Carolina, yes, the NRA says they've been involved, but anything that has ever gotten done in North Carolina has been done by a state-level group that was not even affiliated with the NRA. So you need to join your state-level groups. Avoid the ones that are associated with the Door Brothers or anything with Nager. They're Rocky Mountain gun owners. Sorry, I know you're in Colorado. You don't want to deal with it.
No. I totally agree with you there. I don't support them personally.
But like if you're in Virginia, Virginia Citizens Defense League. If you're in Arizona, Arizona Citizens Defense League. In North Carolina, Grassroots North Carolina, where it looks like we finally may be getting rid of the pistol purchase permit. Was the NRA behind that? No. I mean, we did it well enough that the North Carolina Against Gun Violence, which is an Everytown organization, didn't even bother to show up for the hearing. We got the sheriffs who had been the impediment on our side for once. I mean, just because you have to pay $5 for it costs them $100 to process a $5 permit, finally they woke up. In most states, the ILA representative doesn't just do your state, he does your state and 3 or 4 others. They're spread thin. Now, I will say, I've been getting emails from the ILA person assigned to North Carolina. I'm not sure how successful he's been, but he says he's more active than he's been in the past. And I know I talked to Tim Knight, who used to be a board member. And he thinks Jason is doing better at the grassroots than Chris Cox. That said, I've always looked at the NRA as more of a national organization, doing like Frank said, stopping legislation before it even got, to hearings. And Chris Cox was really good at that. But somehow he was a threat to Wayne and therefore had to go. Or a threat to Brewer, which is the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, because there's to echo what John is saying. In Pennsylvania, we have a group called Firearms Owners Against Crime, and they're the active block it before it gets started group. But we'll go to hearings, and like for example, universal background checks, and all the associations, GOA, FOAC, we're all no background checks. The NRA representative comes in and says, "Sure, we can do background checks." We wanted to strangle them because there was no coordination with what the state wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, Mr. Ned, I suppose you have a whole lot to say on that topic, and I am curious which of the other organizations you think is doing a outstanding job.
Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation. I mean, any one of them are showing signs of being the heir apparent. Firearms Policy Coalition is probably the one that I'm going to support or throw my lot in. Unfortunately, I can't do what Mr. Tate does and support all of them. That's just not a situation that I can get involved in at this point. But really, and I covered this extensively in research, that now Jason definitely has taken a new look and a new approach, because the number of emails that I've gotten to attend webinars. There's actually one next week with our local ILA representative, and I've attended 3 others. Once about every month in the past 3 months. So there's definitely a new approach, because before, as Mr. Richardson pointed out, they don't cover a single state. They always cover multiple states, and they're pretty much, they almost, I've talked to state representatives, the state lobbyists in a lot of organizations from Arizona all the way to New Hampshire, and the same thing. There's never been, for the past decade in some cases, any coordination between the NRA and any state level group. So all of this push at the grassroots level has never involved the NRA, although the NRA will gladly take credit for it. And that's one of the things I pointed out as far as them being a failed bureaucracy. They've only acted in their own self-interest for, it's hard to pin a date as to when, after Wayne came in control, when all of a sudden it was decided that they needed to stay alive, rake in as much money as possible, and therefore do essentially as little as possible in order to continue those wonderful phone calls and pile on the mail to say, give us more money. I mean, the amount of funds in membership communications, we're talking in excess of some years of $40 million for 5 million people, spending $8 a person on average to get money out of them, is just insane. So
Wow.
That's something to add to that perspective, because again, looking from the tax records have an amazing amount of information, and if you decide to start sifting through that pile of numbers, that absolute mountain of a headache.
And we've got so many good questions in the comments. For example, the next question that comes up is lobbying. Who lobbies, right? Does Firearms Policy Coalition lobby? Does Second Amendment Foundation lobby? Is lobbying even a thing anymore? I don't know. I'm not a lobbyist, and the lobbyists that I've met, I've not been very impressed with. Frank, are you seeing any sort of lobbyists do good work?
Yeah, lobbyists still happens. I can really only speak to Pennsylvania, but the Firearms Owners Against Crime is very active. We have lobbying days, kind of like VCDL does in Virginia, where we go in and we talk to legislators. It's a statewide group, so we work with the local legislators in terms of what we're trying to do. GOA right now is really pushing to try and get Pennsylvania to become the next constitutional carry state. Long shot, because we know the governor is going to veto it, and we don't have enough votes to override it. But still, we're at least playing offense there, and the NRA is nowhere to be seen in those activities. So, to me, GOA stepping up and trying to do it, FOAC is doing it. Firearms Policy Coalition is more on the strategy side for that, and on the backside with legal support. But again, Adam Kraut's part of that, and I view myself as having picked up Adam's mantle, trying to run for the board and reform things.
It strikes me when you say that. In years past, I've had this, and I think many of us have had this mentality where we simply give money to people that will go and lobby for us. We'll give money to the NRA so that they can do the fighting, instead of us doing the fighting ourselves. Is lobbying a thing? Yeah, it's a thing if you are doing it, right? It's not what the NRA can do for you. It's what you can do for the NRA. It's not what the Second Amendment can do for you. It's what you can do for the Second Amendment, and so on and so forth. That's obviously one of the reasons why I'm doing this tonight. It's a interesting subject to try to take the bull by the horns and go and do it yourself.
Well, to me, that's one of the things. Ned mentioned a critical piece, is the NRA seems to only act in its own self-interest. And that, to me, one of the things that it needs to do is to lose the not invented here syndrome, lose the only for the NRA's benefit approach, and collaborate. Because I think, working with state organizations on state issues, let the states take the lead, NRA support the state organizations that are doing the right thing. The NRA can make a difference at the federal level, with senators and representatives and the president. I'm not sure if it works, maybe even at the governor level. But to me, the state organizations need to own their state house and all the laws that are coming out of the state house.
That's really interesting. Mr. Richardson, I'm curious. All this is running through my mind. Where of course, Frank was, in his, state capital lobbying his representatives. I guess that was 2019, wasn't it, Frank? That's been a while ago. Yeah. Are you seeing that happen more commonly now, John?
That the NRA is lobbying, or
Oh, no. That people are regular citizens are actually going out and kind of getting into the fight themselves. And I say the fight, the legal, lobbying fight.
yes and no. We still have a hard time getting people out to go to Raleigh. I mean, we're kind of shaped a lot like Pennsylvania, but even longer, or wider, I should say. So for me to get to Raleigh is about 4.5, 5 hour drive.
Jeez, man. I didn't realize it was that far for you.
Well, if from one end to the North Carolina to the other is over 500 miles.
Yeah, well, 500 miles, for me in an airplane is, an
Yeah,
hour.
no problem.
Sorry.
But I don't think we'll ever have like the big lobby days like Virginia or they had in Illinois with everybody wearing the yellow shirts with the Illinois State Rifle Association. We just never have been that way, I don't think. I don't think there's even Grassroots North Carolina does not have any registered lobbyists because we're an all volunteer organization. So really, we don't even need to have it to register as lobbyist. But I mean, I do see in states that have like a GOA lobbyist, Texas. My friend Rachel Malone is their organizer in Texas, and they may just have constitutional carry. And a few years ago, who would have believed it? They didn't have open carry.
I love that Wild West pimp style. Oh, it's so good.
But
Oh, Lord.
I'm so sorry. I've got to get a T-shirt with that on it. It's so great. Oh no, I digress. If you don't know what that is, one of the ladies debating how concealed carry without a permit would be so terrible. She described it as Wild West pimp style. I love it. Sorry. Oh, and no. As you were saying, please continue.
I've kind of lost my train of thought there. It happens when you get older. I just don't think I'd be wearing a T-shirt that said Wild West Pimp Style. Not in North Carolina. Maybe here in Western North Carolina.
Well, I was happy to read, of course, that Marion Hammer is lobbying for dogs off of leashes in Florida. I guess that's what the NRA does now with Unified Sportsmen of Florida. They go after the dogs in Florida. Did you guys see that one? Oh
No.
man. Oh yeah. Marion Hammer. That was last month. She's off her rucker and then some.
Well, from what I understood, I remember reading something. I guess it was last summer, and it was something that some legislator had crossed Marion, and then therefore she came down and had the NRA object to some one of his bills that was totally out of their bailiwick, just because she was mad that he crossed her. I think
did he
she's
freeze?
very vindictive.
Or did I freeze?
Well, she can do whatever she wants. She's got money coming in from the NRA until 2030 if that contract survives.
Okay. Well, that's an example of one of those things that had the bankruptcy been accepted with an examiner or a trustee, I don't think that contract. Not only would that contract not survive, there would be clawback provisions for inappropriate payments. And if you know what I mean, if you know what I mean by clawback, it's pulling money back.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I think that we do need to discuss or broach is that if we as concerned Second Amendment citizens should try and do is to not dictate, let others dictate the future of the NRA. We need to start having a serious dialogue to going on the offensive ourselves and find a way to get a voice in this upcoming civil suit. We need to show people that the membership is just not going to roll over and let Wayne and the Gang of Four dictate how we go out. I would like to see something happen officially. I think that we need to start talking about it, getting a petition moving, and getting something going to show that the membership is not going to sit idly by.
I can share a little bit. When the NRA declared bankruptcy back on January 15th, we were 2 days from filing a class action suit to intervene in the New York Attorney General's case on behalf of the members of the NRA, basically saying that the board and Brewer were not representing the members and that the members needed a seat at the table. With the NRA bankruptcy being dismissed this week, that has restarted. And if anyone is interested in participating in that, please reach out to me. I will connect you with the lawyers. All my paperwork and my affidavits are signed, sealed, and ready to go. If any NRA director would like to participate in this, we would welcome an NRA director stepping up and doing this. I would say it would be similar to what Judge Journey did in the bankruptcy proceeding. It would be a director, a currently sitting director, standing up and joining a member's suit to intervene in the New York AG case.
From what I understand about New York nonprofit law, having a director or directors be part of that lawsuit as interveners is critical, because as I understand it, we as members have less standing than a director would have. And having directors involved on it would avoid having it thrown out for lack of standing.
Yeah, and that's one where, if 5 directors resign between now and the next meeting, I get moved into the board. So there's a long shot there. And then if I get elected as a write-in, that's where I would have the standing as a director.
Well, I would imagine that even former directors would have a little more weight. If no?
Just a member.
Interesting.
You're either an active director or you're a member.
Wow. Interesting. Now, and that said, not only do we have that going on, but David Delaquila's case is still going on. Have you guys heard anything related to that?
No.
Wasn't it temporarily dismissed while the bankruptcy was in?
I
think
so.
it might have been.
Yes.
Yeah, but he can bring it back.
There's that, but not only do you have that, you still have NRA versus Eckerman McQueen, and that's going to go ahead now, and vice versa, and Oliver North, NRA versus Oliver North. Yeah, there's a lot of things that'll be kicking up very soon, but
yeah, and you still have the NRA versus Chris Cox. I mean, the NRA's already committed $7.8 million to resolve a $2 million dispute. So how many will it get to 10? I would not take the under on that one.
Again, going back to my original statement at the beginning, when you look at all these other cases that are going on, to me, the only thing that makes sense, it's not about the money. It's about what these people know and being able to lock them down to keep them from talking. I think that is the only thing that makes sense about about all these lawsuits against these other organizations, these vendors, and these former NRA personnel. It's what they know. It's what they could say that Wayne LaPierre, the Gang of Four, are worried about. Again, I think that there's some serious issues that they're trying to hide.
Well, notice even Craig Spray.
Criminal liability. Yep.
Sorry to step on you, but I mean, just to reinforce what you're saying, Craig Spray was apparently having resigned for health concerns. And we found out later, no, LaPierre fired him.
Yep.
And he never corrected. Spray never came out and said, no, I was fired. It only came out during the depositions. Oh my gosh! So yeah,
probably because of the NDA that he was probably forced to sign.
Yeah.
Well, the other part is he still does not have a signed separation agreement, and so he is economically held hostage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man, takes a whole lot of finagling to do something really criminal, doesn't it?
And that, if you go back to our good friend Josh Powell, that was probably the reason he didn't get paid off, shall we say, so therefore he wrote the book,
Yeah.
which I still haven't read or bought.
You're not missing much.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
The one thing that I will say about that book, I was really interested to see how they went about writing the response to Oliver North not showing up the day before the members' meeting in Indianapolis. That was interesting, and seeing he described in detail how they were working together. The kitchen cabinet was working together to make the response, and that shows me that yeah, the culpability is obviously there. Well, gentlemen, I want to get to one question / comment that I saw earlier, and this has to do specifically with Save the Second, and so I'll just go ahead and kind of address that. One of our goals, of course, was to reform the NRA from the inside. We did have truly 5 goals, and all of those revolved in and around the NRA. And so the question is, are those goals still applicable? Yes and no. Yes, we still want to continue to work towards resuscitating or otherwise salvaging the National Rifle Association of America. And here's the logic behind that. Let's say your car gets 4 flat tires. Do you set the car on fire? No. Do you have your friend who is driving the car set it on fire? No. In fact, you stop anybody from setting the car on fire. It just needs 4 new tires. Okay, and I say 4 because I'm also referencing the gang of 4. That's that analogy, right? So if we get the gang of 4 out of the way and install some good leadership, well, the NRA may have a chance of being able to be driven again. If it can be driven again, guess what? I still don't want to light it on fire. That engine is probably awesome and could go to a car that needs it. There's so many analogies within that, and so yeah, Save the Second has to be focused still on trying to make the NRA not a dumpster fire, which it of course is a dumpster fire in every shape, form, or fashion. I had the Office, Michael Scott saying I declared bankruptcy earlier because it's nothing more than painfully cringeworthy. We heard cringeworthy mentioned time and time again from the NRA's lawyers in their bankruptcy hearing. At some point, the NRA will be uncringeworthy, and that's either through our efforts and the efforts of Frank Tate and the efforts of Ned Scott getting the word out and John Richardson's blog. Hey, everybody has a part, right? And of course, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to go in and single-handedly write some suits and be William Brewer thinking I'm going to change the NRA, but I'm going to do my darndest. Gentlemen, the NRA might fall. What do you think? Do we still persevere in trying to reform it, that is? Mr. Frank, I already know your answer, but go ahead.
I've been a member since 1979. I've been a life member since 1991. I want to stay a member of this organization and see it be successful and thrive for the rest of my life.
That's me too. Absolutely. Yeah, it's horrible today under Wayne LaPierre. Okay, this is NRA under Wayne. I want NRA under someone not having dementia. Mr. Richardson, what do you think?
Well, I'm an endowment life member. I've been a life member since 2010, but an on and off annual member since the early 70s, back when you actually either had a life member or an elected official to sign your application to join the NRA. It goes back that far. Yeah, we need the NRA. There's 5 million people. And I think Stephen Gutowski made a very good point. The membership has stagnated at that level. We should be at 10, 15, 20 million people. We have all these new gun owners that if we get out of the if we just fight for the Second Amendment and we forget about everything else, we attract them. And we need to, I am certainly not a liberal, but we need to stop worrying about video games, about abortion, about this, that, anything. We don't have to be social conservatives. We just need to fight for the Second Amendment and make it that and that alone. There's no reason we're not at 10 million. I mean, we should be at 10 million. We should be at 15 or 20 million members.
Yeah, at the rate that I've been teaching students, heck, you know what I mean? There's, my goodness gracious, probably 300 persons in the past, let's say 12 months, right? At least, probably more. And my goodness gracious, if every one of those had decided to become an NRA member, well, yeah, we'd probably be closer to 20 or 30 million by this point, in that sort of expansion of gun owners in the United States. Oh, man.
And I plan to go to Houston. I mean, I may be beating my head against the wall, but,
we can headbang together. It'll be fine.
That's right.
Yeah, the cool kids.
Heavy metal.
That's right. And by the way, what Mr. Richardson is referring to, if you don't already know, the NRA meeting of the members is scheduled for Labor Day weekend in September, of course, 2021. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Ned, are you going to join us?
Oh, that ruins a lot of plans for me. Well, yes, I think it's more important to attend the annual members meeting and to make your voice heard than any other enjoyable pastime you can do. And back to the point of, that we've kind of talked, sort of glossed over, the gun culture. The NRA has left the gun culture. They've left it behind. The gun culture has been transformed in the last 20 years, because I've been around firearms essentially all my life. My father, I'm a second generation NRA life member. If I wanted to spend time with my father, I had to be in his gun room, because that's where he was at if he was not having dinner or at work. That was his place. And so I have a strong emotional connection about the subject matter. And the gun culture has changed because I've seen it growing up. And what it was when I was younger is definitely not what it is today. You can see it in the market. You can see it everywhere. The NRA chose to detach itself from the gun culture and leave it behind, which is why if you attend any NRA meeting, that if you're allowed to do so in your area, because of all these, some states are still under COVID restrictions, you see it. I have been in the youngest demographic, and I'm not a spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination. I'm in the youngest demographic of attendees. That is why the NRA has been stagnant. That's why essentially they're falling apart, and why you have some members that just aren't participating. Why, as Mr. Tate pointed out, only 110,000 voted. And in fact, the funny part is about 2 or 3% even sent back blank ballots, which I thought was significant of the percentage that even responded. How many of them sent back a blank ballot to the board to say that they couldn't trust anybody on the board? And that's a problem. And I want to support the spirit of the NRA. I don't care who carries the flag, what name is on it, as long as the spirit and the intent that caused its creation stays alive, to provide effective training for people who want it, and to protect a constitutional right. That is all that matters to me. So,
amen.
Should the NRA get molded, get morphed in, or merged in with another organization, so be it. As long as the spirit of what it means stays alive, that is what's important to me. So, and we need to find a way to tap into the up and coming generation. We need to get the 40 and under crowd involved in something.
I fit that demographic.
And to me, we need to get the urban crowd and the women in. The thing that I've been doing this year that's most rewarding is I have trained 30 instructors in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area. And they're out hustling because you have to have a class to get a license to buy a firearm. And these guys are all about arming the citizens to be able to protect themselves. And I am honored to be down there teaching them. Basically every 6-8 weeks, we're putting another 10 instructors through.
Wow, that's phenomenal. I like to hear that. Man, yeah. So, gentlemen, we've been going for an hour now. I think that's an excellent highlight or pinnacle to conclude with. Frank, you're amazing. John, love everything you write. And Ned, I mean, yeah. Thank you all, gentlemen, so much for being here. I absolutely am honored to be amongst such awesome guys. And obviously, I'm a young guy, so my generation, well, at least the guys that I hang around with, well, we really like shooting a whole lot, but very few of us want to support the NRA. Hopefully that will change, and hopefully we can be a part of that change. Until then, folks, we'll bid you adieu. And I do want to leave you, of course, with the quote from John F. Kennedy. For anybody that thinks that we're hating on the NRA and we just, some Bloomberg conspiracy asset or whatever, to state the fact, frankly, is not to despair the future nor indict the past. The prudent heir takes careful inventory of his legacies and gives a faithful accounting to those of whom he owes an obligation of trust. We'll see you later, gents.